glad you're here today. I want to point out next week's speaker is Anthony Brown. He's an internationally acclaimed baritonist. He performs in performing arts centers all over the world. He's a peace activist, and it should be a really great, really sort of small performance here at the Y together with the talk. There has been some publicity that has flipped the next 2 dates. So just be aware it is Anthony Brown this next week. If you see something different, that is the case. The following week is Reverend Michael Crosby and the Reverend Terrence Thomas coming to talk about social justice bridge building across lines of race. So next week is Anthony Brown. I hand it to Michelle, who will tell us who all is helping us with this program. Thanks, Michelle.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Macy and I'm Assistant Director, Allyship and Solidarity for Diversity and Social Justice Education. And I just wanted to list out our sponsors before we get started. We're so grateful to the many sponsors who helped make this series possible. So that includes the Center for Advanced Study, Humanities Research Institute, Women in Gender and Global Perspectives Program, College of ACES, College of Fine and Applied Arts, First Mennonite Church of Champaign-Urbana, the McKinley Foundation, Social Action Council of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign, Urbana-Champaign Friends Meeting, Student Cultural Programming Fee for the University, College of Education, Center for Global Studies and the U.S. Department of Education Title VI grants, the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning, Department of African American Studies, Office of the Provost, and School of Social Work. I also just wanted to quickly highlight that everybody should have a little postcard on their seat that gives you the rest of the lineup for this series. And then there's also this half sheet of paper. If you could, at the end of this program, fill this out, or there's a QR code where you can do it online if you would prefer that. This just helps get some feedback for us so we can continue to improve this program. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jacob to introduce our speakers.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this Friday. My name is Jacob. Hello, hello. Talk big. So my name is Jacob Longacre. I use he, him, his pronouns. I work at Diversity and Social Justice Education. It is my pleasure today to introduce and welcome our two excellent speakers. First, Mr. Dementro Powell, also known as Devo.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Powell is a full-time PhD student in higher education. Currently serves as Director of Community Development and Engagement with the University of Illinois Police Department. Mr. Powell's worked for 10 years on this campus as Assistant Director of the Office of Registered Organizations, also as Associate Director at BMAC, and now currently with UIPD. He serves as Social and Event Planning Chair for the Black Faculty and Professionals Alliance organization and is advisor to Illinois Men's Rugby Club Team, Illini Hockey Club Team, and UIPD ambassadors. Mr. Powell also enjoys cooking, watching and critiquing movies, along with hosting and planning events such as dinners, brunches with friends, and other activities. And then also my pleasure to introduce Dr. Carlton Cummings of the Counseling Center here at the University of Illinois. Dr. Cummings identifies as an effeminate Black gay man, serves as clinical counselor at the Counseling Center, and is co-chair of Queers and Allies Outreach Team, and also member of Sankofa Outreach Team for Black Mental Health and Wellness. Dr. Cummings is also a proud UIUC alum, and I know that has definitely informed his experience here at the university. So please give me a round of applause as we welcome Mr. Powell and Dr. Cummings for today's event. Should be good. Just click.
Okay. Oh, I can hear myself. That's my first question. Can you hear me?
That might be bad.
Well, hello. Again, my name is Dr. Carlton Carlton, Dr. Cummings, or Carlton, doesn't really matter to me. I use he, him, they, them pronouns, all pronouns, as long as they're used with respect, I'm open to it.
And again, my name is Dementro. You can refer to me as Debo, like everybody else. And again, I'm coming from the Department of Public Safety as the Director of Community Development and Engagement. Good afternoon.
So thank you for having us. Today we're going to talk a little bit about cultivating belonging for queer students of color at Illinois. Okay.
Maybe.
There we go. So some things that we'll kind of touch on today is what does it kind of look like at the moment to have queer student of color spaces on campus, or what is the kind of the temperature of that at the moment? What does that look like for queer spaces in the greater Champaign-Urbana area? And then how do we kind of combat the lack thereof by creating spaces and establish community within the university and outside of the university when it comes to queer students and queer folk within the community of color? And so this conversation is really based on and kind of relating to directly to our We Are Here Block Party for Queer Students of Color that just happened this past Saturday. It was a collaborative effort put on by the Counseling Center in partnership with all of the cultural houses, so the Native American House, the Asian American Cultural Center, the Bruce D. Nesbitt African American Cultural Center, La Casa Cultural, and the GSRC, the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center, as well as in partnership with a bunch of community organizations, specifically the Up Center, which is housed here, or United Pride, and with the Greater Central Illinois AIDS Project. I feel like I'm slaughtering that, but GCAT, and the Champaign-Urbana Public Health. And so this event came together from an idea that was brought up by one of our pre-doctoral interns last year, Dr. Shakara Hamilton, where she noticed from some of her LGBT queer students of color clients, as I noticed as well in my previous year and throughout the years here, that there was a common kind of conversation around not really having spaces, not feeling connected to certain resources, whether you go to like a cultural house but don't really feel like your queer identity is validated or affirmed or seen in a way, or going to like queer spaces and not feeling like your ethnicity or your racial background isn't necessarily appreciated or celebrated and affirmed in some way, shape, or form. So really understanding that that intersection of race, sexuality, and gender hasn't necessarily been looked at deeply enough, and really to a point where we haven't created spaces for our queer students to come together to make community, but also feel like they're a part of the larger campus and Champaign-Urbana community.
To kind of add on that to what he's not saying, this was the first year for the block party. And when Dr. Cummings came to us and the whole committee, that sort of thing, what he's not telling y'all is that he was a little shy and apprehensive about it because he didn't know it was something that he would be able to kind of pull off at the timing of it happening. And so with the work of the other people that he just mentioned and collaborating and that sort of thing, collaboration, I want to emphasize that word because collaboration is a very strong and powerful word that people don't understand or utilize enough. And so even during this presentation today, I want you to kind of keep that in mind, just how powerful and just how strong and beneficial collaboration really is, because we were able to pull this event out with the short time that was provided for us, and he got to learn a lot along the way with the people that was working at the table. So I just want to kind of give him acknowledgement and a good hand for that, if you will help indulge me on that.
But yes, thank you, Debo. I think that is a great point. In my mind, it was this big on-taking, and when we sat down and talked about it, what it looked like to plan it, what it looked like to execute it, everybody around me was very much like, this is something we really want to do, this is something that we're invested in, this is something that we feel like students and the larger community need, so let's just do it. And I think that mindset is kind of at the core of this presentation. Regardless of what it is that you want to do, or the resources that you have to do it. If you have the right group of people who are really invested in doing it, all you have to do is just do it. And so that's where I'll go with that. And so it's kind of like give a little bit of background as to like what really brought us to this place of wanting to do something like this. We did an assessment essentially of like queer student of color spaces on campus. And as an alum, I can tell you that when I was here some time ago, I'm not to date myself, that number was relatively low. I will tell you that as an intern in 2020 during the pandemic, that number was probably lower than it was when I was here. And at this moment, where we're at, where things are kind of reviving, we're kind of back to what we call normal in a sense. There's still a lag in kind of getting or creating spaces that are queer student of color focused. And so we do have some spaces, so like we have the GSRC, that's very much so like LGBT focused generally. And then we have a couple of LGBTQIA student organizations. More we had prior to the pandemic. With the pandemic, we've seen a decrease in them. Then we also have the cultural houses that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Those are very culturally, ethnic, racial, identity focused. And then also we have the Illini Union Board drag show that happens. But also at that point, it's very LGBT focused, not really emerging at the intersection of race, gender, sexuality. And so based on what I kind of just said, there's a bunch of minority spaces, but there's not any space that kind of takes into consideration how intersecting minority identities could impact the experience of students who may identify as, say, Black, gay, or feminine, or Black and trans, or Latinx and trans, and so on and so forth. And I think that's a real deficit that also kind of informs the experience that students of color who also are queer have, that is very unique and different from all the other students on campus. And so this event really highlights that there is a lack thereof of queer student of color spaces, and we wanted to kind of fill that void as best as possible.
And I was just going to say that even with this, when we mentioned the IUB drag show, that sort of thing, we honestly, it was like, okay, that's one show, it's 365 days of the year, and that's the only thing we could come up with, that sort of thing. So that means we need to take some more initiative to kind of get some more of these programs here on campus, in our community, that everyday life, right? To kind of educate, and again, what was that word I said earlier? Collaborate, exactly. So to kind of get these efforts going and get people to kind of understand the importance of what we're talking about here today.
And so then we kind of thought about expanding beyond campus, because we know that students don't just engage with the campus community. In a lot of ways, they engage with the larger Champaign-Urbana community. And the larger Champaign-Urbana community also engages with the campus community and vice versa. And so we want to take that into consideration. And so one pretty well known, I would say, queer space in Champaign-Urbana is the Up Center, aka Uniting Pride, which is basically the LGBT resource center of the larger Champaign-Urbana area, and also one of the forerunners for the Champaign-Urbana Pride Parade and Fest. And so at that point, Shakara took the initiative and really connected with Nicole at the Up Center and with Pride to kind of get them involved in this process, because there is a Pride in Champaign-Urbana, and so at that point, that's something that we definitely want students to be engaged with, especially since it happened around the time that students come back. But outside of the Up Center, there isn't really any, at least to my knowledge, or to many people's knowledge, other LGBT spaces. When I was a student here, I don't know if this will date me, but we had LGBT clubs and bars and things of that sort. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. Upon returning, those things no longer exist. Granted, with the pandemic, of course, there's still bars and things that are open, but some of the LGBT days or queer days that certain bars had no longer was a thing. So there's a lot of what used to be queer spaces in Champaign-Urbana that no longer exist. And so taking that into consideration, there's this two-sided sword where it's like the Champaign Urbana queer folks of color, or even queer folks generally, don't really have spaces. Queer folks of color on campus, even queer folks generally on campus, don't really have spaces. How can we kind of meet the needs of both of those communities in a way that creates community between them two?
Okay.
And so I kind of like dropped little nuggets of this throughout there. But COVID made a lot of things very difficult. Oh, is it not moving?
Yeah, it's not moving.
Oh my goodness. I have no idea. It's moving here. Yeah. I have no idea. I'm so sorry. I'm a therapist.
Not an IT guy.
Me and technology are not friends. Okay, perfect.
Well, clearly the IT needed therapy.
So I'm just gonna walk you through these, since I saw them, you didn't. You made them, they should be seen, right?
And I love how y'all just sat silently and didn't say anything.
We have to collaborate.
Yeah.
And so here we were, the impact of COVID. I've sprinkled that throughout that, but I think COVID really did play a role in a lot of things just kind of dissipating. Also kind of what seems like a disintegration of community. Everybody's kind of sparsed out into their different corners and things of that sort. Being shut down, I'm sure it didn't help in any way, shape, or form. And so I think the great thing about, I'll rephrase that, something that is good that possibly came out of COVID, there was nothing great about COVID, was that, there's this revitalization, this rejuvenation, there's an opportunity to really start new things, or revamp old things. And so I think with that spirit, we then came together to make the We Are Here Black Party for Christians of color.
And I'll just add to that, just to kind of think about COVID, I guess COVID impacted every single person in this room for one way or another. And so just imagine yourself as being one of the queer students of color, that sort of thing. We already have, there's already a lack of resources here on campus and places to go, safe spaces, things like that. And now you're locked into space somewhere because we're, in quarantine and things of that nature. And so, and you don't feel like you may not have anywhere to go, people to talk to, and you're isolated and all that. So that COVID just added on to whatever pressures that he or she may have been experiencing at that particular time. So we need to kind of think about that and seeing what we are doing and seeing just how vital having these resources here on campus, be it because I seriously doubt that something like this is never going to happen again, and that sort of stuff, or even something worse, heaven forbid. So I think thinking about, and that's in each of us and everybody in this room and on the campus, what that will look like fundamentally, that sort of thing, and having and showing that ethic of care for the students and people who are in these spaces overall.
Indeed. So keeping that in mind, three things that was really important in creating this space, and I think creating spaces moving forward, was intra-campus collaboration, community partnership and engagement, flexibility and commitment. Intra-campus collaboration, so that's more so what I was talking about when I said that we connected with all of the cultural houses, the GSRC, making sure that we have buy-in from all of these different units who, in some way, shape, or form, interface with the students that we're trying to make space for. But then also in a way that shows students, shows campus, and starts this process of, or this feeling of collaboration between these two units that then makes a physical intersection. Where it's like, now BNAC and the GSRC have a relationship, and La Casa has a relationship with the GSRC, so on and so forth. Not to say that that wasn't the case before, but now that we're working together, we're doing something in collaboration together, we are both at the same event, or we're all at the same event, trying to meet a common goal. That builds camaraderie, that builds relationships, and I think that opens the door for more collaboration. And so, intra-campus collaboration, I think that was a big part of it, but then also bringing in the community. So we all know that we have Champaign Event of Pride. That is not a campus or a UIUC kind of event. That is a Champaign-Urbana event. But it's also something that we want and we promote to students and to the larger U of I campus. And so we want that or the community wants the engagement from us, and so in a way, we should want to engage with the community as well. And so being that Pride is essentially one of the bigger events and something that automatically kind of connects queer folks generally, it would be remiss of us to not connect with the Epicenter and with Pride. And so like I said earlier, Shakara really did a really good job of making that connection. And in doing so, the Block Party then became an official Pride event, which opened up doors for us to publicize it more, for it to be, in a way, more official as this Pride event, to where it's like more alluring to not just community members, but also to students. Aside from the Epicenter, also collaborated with GCAP and the CU Public Health Department was really important in just making sure that students had a wide range of different resources that are particularly important for this particular population. When it comes to mental health, emotional health, physical, and sexual health, I think that bringing all of these community and campus organizations together was just pivotal, for lack of a better word, in making sure that students had their hands in every pot that they can possibly have to get all the things that they would need, either throughout the year that they have, like a senior, or throughout the years that they'll be here if they're a freshman. And I think because this was an inaugural event, nothing like this, I won't say nothing like this has happened, but we haven't done anything like this before. I haven't done anything like this before. It was big. It was a big idea. It was something that at the beginning felt, to me at least, impossible or just like an uphill battle. And I think throughout the process, it became more and more apparent that flexibility in what we expected or what we wanted or what we felt would be important to have was important, but also a commitment to just making sure that the thing happened was also important, regardless of whether we have the dream that we had or we have the bare minimum, making sure that something with this name, with this idea, with these collaborations actually have to show students, one, that we're here for them, we're here for queer students of color, but also to let them know that we're here for them, letting us know that they're here. And so here's the We Are Here moment. Anything to add, bro?
I think the only thing I'll say when we're talking about creating these spaces is that I think it's important to, when we have these spaces, we come up with an idea and title these spaces or label these spaces whatever X is going to be. I think it's also important to help the population or the students or the community and so forth know that they are welcome too. If you're allies, you know, that sort of thing. Because a lot of times when I'll see, let's say we have an event, I'll pick on the drag show for a sec. And so there's a drag show and automatically students automatically assume, oh, this must be for the gay population. Or if there's something like the, I don't know, some dance or something like that that black students are putting on, the late night dance usually, and they think, oh, it's only for black students, you know, that sort of stuff. So we need to kind of get out of that rut as well when we're starting to create these spaces that, yeah, these are spaces where, you know, it may be the coordinators or the developers are this particular group, but doesn't mean that you're not welcome as well. And so we want to make sure to keep that going.
And so that is the full breadth of our presentation, and I think we are open to all of the questions.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, thank you.
Could you go back a few slides? I just want to ask a few questions before. Yeah, so regarding the block party, could you go into a little bit more detail about that? If that's fine.
Sure, detail of what?
I know which thing about the block party.
Oh, sure.
So,
So The We Are Here Block Party was an event that was, I call the idea baby of Dr. Shakara Hamilton, which is one of our former interns at the Counseling Center. Her, myself, and another former intern, Robbie Newton, came together and put our brains together as to how we can make this thing happen. And so the idea was for us to create an event, a large-scale event, that was in collaboration with all the different cultural houses, the GSRC, or the Gender, Sexuality, and Resource Center, to create a space for queer students of color. Because what we all noticed as clinicians with this queer students of color that we would interact with throughout the years was that there wasn't really spaces for them, and a lot of them felt invisible on campus. But we're seeing all these different queer students of color, so we know they're here. We can't have that conversation with them because, confidentiality. But we know there's multiple of them. We know that there's room for community, but somehow, some way, they are not connected. So how can we have an event on some large scale that creates a space where those intersections are highlighted? And so we connected with all the different cultural houses and the GSRC to plan out what this will look like. Essentially, we wanted to shut down Nevada Street, which we like to call Cultural House Row, and just have a day of fun, essentially, where there's music and games and
Resources.
But also a time where all students, well, not all, but queer students of color can see all these different resources kind of working together for their benefit.
Wait, so wasn't the thing that happened last week?
Yes.
Okay, so I went through it, I just didn't know what it was called.
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering when it was happening.
Well, thank you for coming.
I thought this was something that I planned in the future.
No. Well, we do hope that this will happen again in the future.
Bigger.
It's happening in the future. But yeah, it happened last Saturday from 1 to 4. And kind of how like Eva was saying, like there was people who just walked by and saw what was happening and joined in the fun, and they're welcome. And then there's folks who actually knew about it and came like intentionally and all that stuff. And so I'm glad that you were there. I hope that you enjoyed yourself and you got good resources.
Could you also show the things on the next slide? Is there any slides on the cooperation?
Not again. I'm just gonna stop touching it. Okay.
Thanks.
No problem.
Any other questions?
Do you feel like engagement has increased since you started collaborating with more organizations?
I remember you all said to repeat the question. So the question was, do we feel like engagement has increased since we started collaborating? That's a really good question. I'm probably not the right person to ask, at least on the counseling service front. I will say that from my understanding of what it's looked like over the last couple of years, there's definitely a hike in engagement across like the different cultural houses, across the counseling center, definitely. I think that, of course, there's just more students on campus, there's a lot more happening, so things are just being utilized a lot more. I think it's a little early to tell right now if there's really been like any shifts in engagement because of the actual block party and it actually happening. And so I'll get back to you on that like the next couple of months to see what kind of happens. But that's a great question, thank you.
Is there going to be another block? Well, you said there would be. When is it?
I love your enthusiasm. And you're excited. So the hope is that it will be like this annual thing. I cannot confirm or deny that that's the case.
Okay, so are there any other events? Well, I know there's one this Saturday, right?
Yes. So this week is Pride Week for Champaign-Urbana. So I'm not sure if you know this, but the Epicenter is actually in this building. So if you go out and around, you can talk to Nicole or anybody in there, and they can tell you about all the different events that are happening throughout the week. I know there's a couple of things happening today. There's Pride Fest and the parade tomorrow. There's a couple of things happening Sunday. And so yeah, it's really queer, we're here kind of week. And so I don't have the link in front of me, but there's a link that shows you like the entire schedule for the week.
Schedule for what?
For Pride, so all the different Pride events, there's a whole schedule that you can see like everything that's happening
Okay,
from.
and last thing, so on the slide it says queer student and color spaces, right? So is there like a dedicated space for, queer students?
Queer students generally?
Yeah.
Yes, so there is the Gender Sexuality Resource Center, which is housed in the Union on the 3rd floor at the front of the Union. So do not get confused, go to the back of the Union and try to go to the 3rd floor. But the GSRC is essentially the LGBT Resource Center for campus. And so you have that space, and then also, like I said, there's the Up Center here, so you can always go there and get resources as well around queer identity.
Okay, thank you.
So many hands.
Yeah.
Sort of along those lines of the last question, is there any intention with the GFRC and your group to create a specific third space, i.e. space work, a school, or home where people can just hang out?
Can you ask that one more time?
Sorry, yeah. So, like, is there, do you all have like plans to try to create a specific space for persons of color to just hang out? Because I think that's talking about obviously the block party is a nice thing, but probably, the next thing is probably imagine so like a specific hangout space where people just go and talk and, chill. So.
Indeed. So the question was, is there like talks or plans of creating a specific dedicated space for queer students of color? Yes. Can't definitively say yes to that. I think that's a great idea. Ideally, in my mind, that's what we would have. I cannot speak for the cultural houses or the council at that point of saying like, yes, this is something that we're going to be doing. I think the overarching goal for all of these spaces, the GSRC, the cultural houses, is to garner a space that welcomes all of the students that fit within the identities that they are speaking to or they're directed toward in a way that takes into consideration the intersectional piece and allows for all people of that identity to feel welcome in that space. So I can't say that we're working on a space that is specifically queer folks of color spaces, but I can say that I think some of those spaces are kind of emerging, whether it be from students and student organizations, or like different programming through the GSRC or BNAC and things of that sort. And so hopefully as time goes on, that'll be a reality.
Just to add in quickly that Fuse is the registered student organization on campus for queer students of color. They meet weekly at the GSRC. I don't remember what their schedule is, but if you're interested in connecting with them, also an amazing RSO. Carlton and Depot, I had a question for the two of you just to share any kind of like impact that you felt in the moment of the block party. I was there for, I don't know, an hour and a half or so. I'm just curious to hear like your favorite moments and stories of something, that like blew you away, something that brought you joy, whatever that might be.
That's can you hear me? It doesn't sound like. I guess for me, that's a big question. When I was there, one was to see it come into fruition, because I know, and like I'm always a big supporter of whoever I'm working with for whatever team that I'm collaborating with and that sort of thing. And so to see kind of Carlton and Shakara's dream kind of manifest, and come into fruition. I think that was a big moment for me, and see that and knowing that they have ideas and a vision to even make it bigger and greater. So that was kind of inspiring. And then the other part, I was telling Carlton yesterday that it was really neat to see students who were walking by, had no idea what was going on at first thought, and then it came to them and was like, oh yeah, it's the block party. So they got excited, that sort of thing. And actually those students I saw come back, so that was really cool. And the third thing I'll mention is that I'm a huge Whitney Houston fan. And so when I heard Whitney playing, I was in my element, and I was like, this is going to be a great block party. So it was, I Want to Dance with Somebody, and I posted it on my Instagram, and I go, yeah, it's not a party unless you got I Want to Dance with Somebody playing. So there it was, so it worked for me.
It was the first song.
It was the first song, sure was.
Everything that people said. I don't think I can pinpoint one moment or one thing that really stuck out. I think the fact that it happened and it was a thing and we made it happen. I'm still soaking that in. I think seeing all the queer students that we did was beautiful. I don't think I've ever seen pride flags on Nevada Street. So to have this overload of pride flags on Nevada Street was also very revolutionary in my mind. All the things that I thought were going to be a problem were not a problem, so that also was just yay me. DJ Silky is still great. I don't know, there's something about queer DJs of color that really just kind of sets a tone. And she really did a really good job from the beginning by playing Whitney.
There you go.
Of setting a great tone and a great vibe for the entirety of the event. So shout out to DJ Silky for that. I think just seeing it all kind of come together, seeing all the different organizations together, seeing all the different community organizations together, being able to talk to people face to face and get to meet people and know that people are real after a whole 2 years of talking to people on Zoom or through emails and things of that sort. I think overall it was just a great kind of experience, not just for students, but also just for queer folks of color generally, myself included. And so I enjoyed all of it, every second, every morsel, every song played, and every piece of pizza eaten.
I didn't have any pizza.
So what do you be posting future events on Illinois?
So the counseling center typically doesn't post our events on the Illinois app. I can't speak for the different cultural houses and things of that sort. What I will say is at that point, it could be helpful to just follow different social media pages. So the Counseling Center, GSIC, African American Cultural Center, so on and so forth. They all post generally on Instagram, Facebook, and things of that sort. So that's probably the best way to get a sense of what's going on.
I try to avoid social media, so.
So you mentioned a lot about the different on-campus resources and organizations that were part of the block party. Obviously, the Up Center is more of a community-based organization that was part of the block party. Could you share a little bit more about what other organizations, community organizations, were part of the block party, and moving forward, what are you hoping to see as far as community engagement in this group?
Indeed. Do you have anything to say?
Well, one of the biggest things I would say, because I know we tried to make this happen at some point in time, but again, with the time we did have, I would love to see more of the police engaged with this community event and how to help to make it grow, and not just, obviously as enforcers or anything like that, but actually engage, having a table. We have the UIPD therapy dogs there, having them come along, that sort of thing, and really, and probably help part of the planning, in that process and that sort of stuff, because I would love love to see, for them to get that experience, to see how things come into fruition, because a lot of times they don't get to see the build up to it. They only are attending or asked to attend these different events and things like that. So for me, I think that would be something. And then getting more of because I am out there at the campus, not just the campus, but the Urbana-Champaign area at large, probably seeing more of those communities come in. So even having different community groups, such as I'm part of Silver Hearts, that sort of a nonprofit organization, NAACP, or these groups and things like that, to be part of this event as well.
I agree with all of that. To answer that first part of your question, we had GCAP. I don't want to slaughter the acronym, but I think it's Greater Central Illinois AIDS Project. And I apologize if that's wrong. And the Champaign-Urbana Public Health Department. And so those were our two main community orgs that were there outside of the Up Center. That was pretty heavy in planning. In addition to everything that Devo said, I think just knowing about different community resources that we possibly could connect with and have maybe table or collaborate in some way, shape, or form for the next one would be great. I think also even depending on what happens in the next year as far as student organizations or just general university kind of units, like McKinley or any of the queer allied churches and things of that sort. Just kind of rallying as many resources as we can, more than we have this year, and kind of bringing them all to the street and showing students what's out there for them.
All right, I have a loud voice, so it'll be okay.
Okay.
I'm Liz Martin. I'm a grad student in social work with a concentration in leadership and social change, and I'm also the queer space facilitator at Best the Student Center, right next to the Union. So we're just down the street from that Nevada Street row there, and we'd love to be involved next year and expand that. Maybe we can expand on Matthews and just have a whole area. So, but I wanted to make everyone aware that we meet on Sunday nights. So this is going to cut in and out. I'll be really loud so it's here. We meet from 8 to 9 p.m. On Sunday evenings, and anyone's welcome of any faith background or no faith background. And we do have conversations for folks who have been perhaps had some issues with church or organized religion in the past, but we're careful with how we speak of things and respectful of one another's backgrounds and all of that. And we're open to feedback and holding space for one another, and anyone is welcome. So if you'd like to talk to me afterwards or anything, I'm here for that.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm gonna give up on this microphone.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. If we can give our speakers a round of applause.
Thank you.